So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night to the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Passages. But before I do that, I should say what says that of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcast, well, guess what? You can with this one too, at Night to the Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually on my YouTube channel and Night to the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whereas you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. Also, I should say that today you might hear quite a bit of sound interference in the background of this video. And that is because, across the road right now, someone's getting their house done up, because why not? And also, next door, my neighbours are having their kitchen done. So you might hear some loud banging in the background of this podcast today, and I can't control that. It's not that anyone's at my door, it's just that they've been making a hell of a lot of noise next door whilst they're doing up my neighbour's kitchen. So if there is any sound interference in this podcast, I do apologise. It's completely out of my control. But other than that, this should be a great and fun podcast to listen to and or watch. So, let's get into it. Passages. So, here's the thing with this film. I had virtually no intention to go and watch this at the cinema whatsoever. In fact, I hadn't even heard of the film until about a week ago when reviews started to come out for it. And then I saw all these 4 and 5 stars reviews coming out for this film from media outlets which I read quite a lot. I was like, oh wow, this film is getting a lot of great critical praise. And then I also heard that Ben Whishaw, who I absolutely love as Q in the Daniel Craig Bond movies, and also as the voice of Paddington in the Paddington films, which is absolutely wonderful. I heard that Ben Whishaw was in this film, and I was like, oh, that's got me more interested as well. And so this week, I went out of my way. I travelled about an hour and a half to a cinema to go and watch this. I went into the cinema completely cold. I didn't know what this film was going to be about. I hadn't seen a trailer for the film. I'd seen a couple of images for the film when I'd read some of the reviews for it. But yeah, I didn't know anything about this film whatsoever. And just before the film started, the BBFC rating came up, when you say whether it's a 12, 15 or it's an 18, and it came up 18, and the reason for it was strong sex. And I was like, oh, what have I got myself into? Because I did not expect that with this film whatsoever. Again, I went in completely cold. And the film follows the story of this character called Thomas, who's in a gay relationship, but impulsively begins a passionate affair with a young woman, which complicates his relationship with his male partner and new female fling. And that's essentially the premise of the film, because, that all progresses, all these complications with this love affair that this gay man has with this woman, and his complicated relationship with his male partner, soon to be ex-male partner, though that gets more complex as the film goes on. You see those relationships progress throughout the film, but that's the premise for Passages. And honestly, here are my thoughts of this film. Here's the thing with Passages for me. It's not my sort of film. However, that being said, I liked it though. I still actually really liked the film. Actually, I'm not going to say we liked the film, but I did like it. And here is the proof that I liked this film. I was sitting there in the first half an hour of the film, and I wasn't really getting along with it. I didn't really get into the film. I was thinking, this isn't my kind of film because it's slow and it's just going to be one of the films which everyone raves about and I just don't get. But then about half an hour to 45 minutes into the film, I realised that I was invested in what was going on, and somehow the film had got under my skin. It's got this... It's hypnotic. That's what it really is. It's hypnotic because I was sat there in the cinema not really liking it, and then before I knew it, I was investing in what's going on. I was caring about what's going on. I was interested in these characters. I found it compelling, and I was swept up by it. I mean, I wasn't as swept up by this film as I was with Past Lives last week. I mean, that film is just phenomenal. I don't think this film is phenomenal. I don't think this film is that great, if I'm being completely honest. But I was taken by it, and I found myself invested in these characters, and I found it almost hypnotic, as I've already mentioned. I found it hypnotic through its framing, through its style, and through the performances, because the main character, Thomas, is really not a likeable character. Yet, Franz Rogowski, I might be pronouncing the actor's name wrong, and apologies if I am. Rogowski, it might be Rogowski actually. Franz Rogowski's performance as Thomas is very compelling. Like, the character is not likeable, and you get that from the outset. The opening scene in the film, you see him being quite horrible. He's a director, he's on a film set, and he's being really mean to one of his actors. But at the same time, you find his performance, you find Franz Rogowski's performance as Thomas more compelling as the film goes on. At least I did. And I didn't really like his character, but I found him interesting at the same time. And that's also how I feel with... That's also how I felt with Ben Whishaw's character in the film. Because, again, Ben Whishaw's character I didn't really like at the start, but I got more invested to as the film went on. And the same with Adele Exarchopoulos. I can't pronounce her name for the life of me, so apologies there. But the one who plays the central female character in the film, the lead female character in the film, she does a really good job. But I didn't really like the character at the start, but then I got more invested in that character went on. Actually, I think that... Again, I can't pronounce the name. It's Adele Exarchopoulos. It's something like that. I just can't pronounce it for the life of me. Apologies there. But I found her character to be the most interesting as the film went on and the most compelling. And that's the character I got most invested in. And I felt that the storylines were all very moving because they were all very believable. I believed in everything going on in the film. It's one of those films which feels very real. You know, I've said that about a lot of films, it feels like, quite recently. But this one, again, in particular, felt real. I felt like I was just watching these normal human people live their lives and have sex, because there's a lot of sex in this film, and a lot of graphic sex at that, which did throw me off a bit, I'm not going to lie, but I did like how it approached all these ideas surrounding sex, all these ideas that sex doesn't constitute a relationship, and that one's actions can be unforgivable. And what was the other theme I've got down here? The toxicity of certain sexual relationships. You know, I really liked how it approached those themes surrounding sex in this film. And I think its focus on some of the graphic sex scenes helped enforce that. Like, I do think some of the graphic sex scenes weren't necessarily needed, and I think they could have been toned down a little bit in terms of their explicit nature. But also, I did like how they drew focus onto the themes of the film, the themes of toxicity. I'm even saying that word correctly. Toxicity. There, got it there. Toxicity in sexual relationships. How sex does not constitute a romantic relationship, a long-term relationship, and how one's actions can be unforgivable. Those are the themes I took from the film, and the film's focus on sex helped enforce that. It was a, you know, it's a well-focused film. It's Is that even making sense? I don't know, because I'm so hot right now. I'm recording this and it's absolutely boiling outside. It's boiling in my bedroom, because that's how it goes when it's this hot and warm. So I don't know how much of this video is making sense, because I am sweating buckets. But you understand the point I'm making. It was a focused film and I liked the themes explored. I must say I didn't find it very relatable, because I've never been through what the characters have been through in the film. But again, there was something about it where I was caught up in it. You know, I said in my initial thoughts on this review that it's not my sort of film, but at the same time, though, I liked it. And that doesn't really make sense. But what I mean by that is that I really thought I was going to dislike the film at the start. I really thought it was going to be one of those films which everyone raves about and I just don't get at all. But then it got under my skin. I think it got under my skin because it is hypnotic. At least it is in my opinion, because through its style and its framing, this film is so beautifully shot and so well framed, and you're watching certain scenes in the film and it is that whole thing of, you know, every frame a painting. You're watching it and I was swept up by it. I'm not really sure why. I'm not really sure why I was swept up by the film. I mean, I suppose for the reasons I've already said in this podcast today. But yeah, I didn't really know anything about it. And usually I wouldn't really like a film like this. But there was something about this film. There was something about the directing of the film, the style of the film, the performances that just got under my skin. Sorry, and I ended up liking it far more than I expected to. I still wouldn't say I enjoyed watching this in the cinema, and I do think there are some parts which are a little bit unnecessary and which feel like they're just trying to fill up that 90-minute runtime. But at about the 40-minute mark, I found myself interested and invested into what was going on. I'll probably never watch this film again, but you know what? I'm glad I did. And yeah, that's why I sit with the film. It's not really my kind of film, but at the same time though, I liked it. And I liked it because it was a hypnotic three-way love story. And yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the film as a whole. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that passages, I'm going to say that it's a 7.8 out of 10. Now, I almost feel wrong giving this film a rating, because I've given it quite a high rating there. It's almost an 8 out of 10, and if a film is an 8 out of 10, I normally think it's brilliant. But at the same time, I've given it that rating because I admired so much about the film, but it was almost one of those things where I felt like I couldn't quite get into it as much as I would do if I'd been through the situations that the characters have been like. I haven't been through those situations. It's kind of like how I felt about You Hurt My Feelings, although I do prefer this film over You Hurt My Feelings. But with You Hurt My Feelings, I watched that film and I was like, maybe I'll like this film in about 10 years' time. And the thing is with Passages, I felt a bit distant from what was going on in certain parts because I haven't been there. And it's one of those films like You Hurt My Feelings, where if I watched it in about 10 years, I might have a very different perspective on it. But I'll probably never rewatch it ever again. Not that I thought it was a bad film. Again, I didn't. It just really wasn't my sort of film. But at the same time, though, I liked it. It got under my skin. I thought the director was really good. And I should say here, I'm not familiar with the director. I know he's done quite a bit of stuff in the past, and I know there are certain people who really like his work. I must admit, I'm just not familiar with him, but I thought he did a really good job with the directing in this film. It got under my skin. It's hypnotic in a way through its performances, through its style, and through its framing, and all that jazz. And you know what? Yeah, it was a worthwhile watch that I'll probably never watch again. But I liked it, and I found myself invested in the film, and I wasn't even sure I liked it for the first 40 minutes, but then after the 40-minute mark, I was like, yeah, somehow I am actually invested in what's going on. I don't know how the film did that, but somehow I'm invested in all of it. And so, as I've already mentioned, I liked this film because it was a hypnotic three-way love story that didn't shy away from dealing with its themes in quite an explicit nature and in quite a sad nature as well. It is quite a dark film tonally, and for those reasons, yeah, I really liked the film. Well, I wouldn't say really liked it, but for those reasons, I liked the film, and I I was swept up by it because of how hypnotic it was. And so, all in all, I'm going to select passages. I'm going to say that it's a 7.7 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast for today. I really don't know how much this podcast has made sense because I'm sweating buckets. And I've spoken about this on the podcast before. When I sweat, I don't think straight. So apologies if this podcast hasn't been the best. But, you know, I liked Passages. That's the point I'm making. Not my sort of film, but I liked it. Anyway, if you've seen Passages, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below, because I'd love to hear what some people thought of the film. Maybe you hated it, or maybe you absolutely adored it. Whatever your thoughts are on Passages, let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As already mentioned, thank you as always for watching or listening, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.